it's not hard concept at all.
Where is the other?
Oh, Lord. Be quiet. Hi. We're going to do World War II, the war in the Pacific today. We're just hitting very in Pacific things. Oh. Okay. All right.
Oh, so fun. Miller, stop. Actually.
They can't do it. They cannot be quiet. They can't do it. God love them, but they cannot. All right. Two major places where the World War II took place. They're called the theaters of war sometimes. One theater of World War II was Europe. The other was the Pacific. The Pacific theater of war included Japan, China, Korea, and the Philippines, and many more islands and countries in Southeast Asia. Okay? Leading up to the war, you had Japan. I'll tell you what, Macy, if you would like to sit up there and kind of strobe that down, use the mouse just to go down, you can do that. Okay? I'm trying to show it on the board for them. Okay? Japan wanted to become a strong country and a world leader. However, because Japan was a small island country, they had to import many natural resources. Some Japanese leaders felt that they needed to gain more land by conquering other countries. In 1937, Japan invades China. They wanted to dominate all of Southeast Asia. I know by today's standards, you look at Japan, the little island country, and you look at China, and you think, wow, gutsy move. You know, this little bitty country invades this great big country. That's quite impressive. So they wanted to dominate the Southeast Asia. So they joined the Axis ally with Germany and Italy in 1940. And of course, they signed the Tripartite Pact in 1940. In 1941, a former general of the army, Tojo, becomes the prime minister of Japan. He was a very strong supporter of Japan joining the Axis power. And now that he was the prime minister, Tojo wanted Japan to attack the United States. And although the U.S. was trying to avoid getting involved in World War II, Japan was worried that the U.S. would try to stop them from taking over some of the countries in Southeast Asia. So they decided to attack the U.S. Navy, hoping that they could sink enough ships to keep the U.S. from ever attacking Japan. Yeah. So the idea was, the reason they hit Pearl Harbor is because Pearl Harbor is in Hawaii, which is closer to Japan than obviously the mainland United States. So they think, well, if we can wipe out most of their battleships, they will not attack Japan. Okay, logically, made sense. Yes, Adam?
What they didn't think clearly, they didn't hit the refuel stations, they didn't hit the submarine base, or they didn't hit the
They did not,
stations.
there's a lot of things they did not hit. Okay, but I don't think that was an error in judgment there.
Yeah.
On December the 7th, 1941, Japan attacked the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor. They surprised the U.S. and sunk many ships. However, this attack did not have the effect that the Japanese had hoped. The U.S. joined the Allies in the World War II the next day. The attack at Pearl Harbor united the Americans with a goal of defeating the Axis powers, and especially Japan. Okay? So the Japanese quickly took over much of the Southeast Asia and was on their way to dominance by 1942. However, the U.S. wins a critical battle in the Battle of Midway Island, which we will talk about later, on June the 4th, 1942. Badly outnumbered, the U.S. Navy sunk 4 Japanese aircraft carriers and forced the Japanese to retreat. Winning this battle gave the Americans cause for hope and was a turning point in the war. In fact, up to this point in time, the Japanese Navy had not been defeated in a battle. So not only did they get defeated, but they lost 4 big battleships, and suddenly
And 6
people went,
carriers.
oh, they can be beat. And it gives people new hope. After the Battle of Midway, the United States began to fight back against the Japanese. They fought to take over strategic islands in the Pacific. One of the first major battles was on the island of, did y'all see that up there? Are we there yet?
Iwo
Yeah.
Jima? It's the island.
After fierce fighting, the U.S. was able to take the island, but they learned that the fighting the Japanese was not going to be easy. There was many battles over islands in the South Pacific, including Iwo Jima, which was probably the most famous one.
Yeah.
Okay, took 36 days of fighting to take the island. Today, the statue of the Marines raising the flag on the island Iwo Jima serves as the Marine Corps memorial in Washington, D.C. That thing is huge. You'll see it when you get to go to D.C. It's big. Okay?
No, it's not.
All right. Finally, in 1945, the Japanese army had been pushed back to Japan. However, the Japanese would not surrender. American leaders felt that the only way to get Japan to surrender would be to invade the main island of Japan. However, they feared the cost of lives would be up to 1 million U.S. soldiers. Because, again, this is where the Japanese were fierce fighters. They believed in death before dishonor.
Yeah, if they like lost,
And
they would literally.
they were arming all civilians and everything to fight, to not let not let a foreign invader come in and take over their country. Okay? Instead of invading, President Harry S. Truman decides to use a new weapon called the atomic bomb.
Oh yeah, fat
We have hydrogen bombs now, which are like 10 times bigger.
So the first atomic bomb was dropped where? Anybody know?
Hiroshima.
No. Yeah, the first test was in New Mexico.
That's not where we dropped it, though.
I mean, we did have it.
Yeah.
We dropped it on Mexico. Freaking Mexico.
We didn't drop it.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Stop! You don't test them by dropping them on your own state, okay? It's
Yeah, that'd be
underground,
Random city.
okay? It was underground testing to see what happened, okay? But they did. They tested them in the desert in low populated areas, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do thinking back.
There's a propaganda.
It
picture
completely
of this.
destroyed the city, killed thousands and thousands of people, but Japan still did not surrender. So we dropped the second one. Where was it dropped at?
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki.
Yeah.
Nagasaki.
This time the Japanese decided to surrender. So on August 15th, 1945, Japan Emperor announced that Japan would surrender. Later on September 2nd, 1945, the Japanese signed a surrender treaty with U.S. General Douglas MacArthur aboard the battleship USS Missouri, and this day was called the J-Day, which means victory in Japan. Okay? Interesting facts. In order to attack Japan, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle demonstrated that a large B-25 bomber plane could take off from aircraft carriers. This is one of the reasons that we had not attacked Japan, because we could not get there, bomb them, and get planes back. They would run out of fuel.
That's why they
So
landed
once they
on
figured out that they could actually take off on these big battleships or
They trained
carriers,
to. They're like, it's impossible to take off.
then they could do it.
global warfare.
Okay, Japanese fighters, pilots would purposely crash their planes into U.S. ships, and these was called kamikaze attacks. The Soviet Union had been at peace with Japan during much of World War II. They agreed to attack Japanese forces in Manchuria on August 8, 1945, but also helped in forcing Japanese to surrender. And the Japanese were guilty of many war crimes during World War II, including killing up to 20 million Chinese people. They had a policy called kill all, burn all, and loot all. They used biological weapons. They tortured prisoners of war. And as a result, many Japanese leaders were executed after the war, including Prime Minister Kojo.
What does biological?
Hi, Jackie.
Doesn't it has something to do with the biological weapons?
Biological is any chemical warfare, gases, things of that nature, yes. Thank you, Macy. Bye-bye.